Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Optometry Unleashed. I'm your host, Dr. Trevor Miranda, and today, our guest is someone who's been turning heads and changing the game in our field, Dr. Ritesh Patel. Dr. Patel's optometry journey began as a childhood dream. After graduating from the New England College of Optometry, his passion led him into the world of professional sports, where he had the unique experience of performing eye exams for the Cincinnati Bengals. Back in Toronto, Dr. Patel made a name for himself as the dry eye clinic director at the Herzig Eye Institute, pioneering North America's first use of the LipiFlow thermal pulsation device. In 2013, he turned another long-held dream into reality by launching his boutique clinic, See and Be Seen Eye Care, offering exceptional patient experience and cutting-edge technology. Dr. Patel set a new standard in optometry, earning him the title of top 3 optometrist in all of Toronto. Today, we're exploring his incredible journey and uncovering the strategies that have propelled him to the top of the eye care world. I'm absolutely thrilled to have him with us, so let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Ritesh.
Thanks for having me. What an introduction. I appreciate you, Trevor. Thanks for having me part of the podcast, and happy to share and happy to just have a great conversation. So I appreciate you putting this on and all the stuff that you do to help make this podcast and the profession a success.
You know what, Rit? It's just so great to be with you. And I know, if I'm speaking from experience, when I'm around you, you get this vibe, this calmness, this chillness. I love that, if I was in a stressful situation, I'd love to be with you because I just know you're going to believe it's going to work out. Whatever comes will come, and you just are really good at stick handling, or whatever you want to call it, around life. And so it's so impressive. I love our listeners to learn from you and catch that vibe that I've experienced firsthand. So thanks again for joining us. I just saw you in Maui with your family. We had a little leadership summit, and you got to tag on a vacation. So how was that? How was Maui?
I think I Recommend puts on such a great, not just a set of conferences, but collaborations, just an opportunity to be one with each other. Because, of course, I think we both have associates, but another team that we work with, but sometimes you can be in your own little silo. So, there's an opportunity to just mesh with people from across the provinces and across the country and just share ideas. Amazing. And it's 4 feet of snow here in Toronto, so I'm not complaining about being 4 feet of sand.
Oh man, we caught some good weather there. It was hard to kind of come back. I could kind of see for me, a flash forward into pseudo retirement where you're spending a few weeks golfing and sunning and just chilling, which was so cool.
I think that's one of the beauties of our profession is that you can do that and then, come back and see patients and do the things that bring you joy that way, and toggle back and get back on the golf course too, if that's what brings you joy. So I think that's actually one of the amazing things about our profession. And again, what I Recommend does, it just kind of allows it to bring it together, right? I'd love to be able to say I'd go on Maui on my own and I'd connect with you on my own and, do that with a bunch of colleagues. But the reality would be it's easier said than done. So when it's actually, the red carpet's laid out for you, I'm going to try and take those steps every chance I get.
And it's one of the many things I admire with you, Ritesh, is, you're balanced, right? You're great at work, and you're great when you're with your family, and you're great when you're relaxing as well. And it was cool to be able to put all those things together, meet your wonderful family, and you're a powerhouse couple. Like a lot of people don't realize that your better half, Priya, is in the optical industry and is doing amazing things as well in the industry.
Oh, you know what? I'm lucky, and it's just like we talk about this often, and in most circles. Actually, I'm surprised I'm not listed this way. I am Priya's husband more than I am Ritesh Patel. So, in a way, no dinners, I'm sure that's the same thing with your daughter at this stage now, right? The fact that you guys are in the same profession, it's just like, it's neat. You get a chance to talk shop, share ideas and stuff like that. And it's very fluid. It's not like we're completely different professions. So she actually just fell into the profession just by sheer chance, coincidence, or kismet, as I would say. It just worked out. So it's kind of nice because, it's great to kind of see us in different facets. The funniest thing is when we see each other at conferences or go places where there's both of us are in the professional setting, we have this way of making an awkward handshake of just like, well, nice to meet you. Like, and for people who don't know us, it's kind of like, oh, just two people meeting each other. And for people that do know us, they're like, well, that's awkward for between a husband and a wife. But that's actually part of our little joke that we have inside.
I love it. That's so cool. I wanted to talk to you about working with the Cincinnati Bengals. That's pretty cool. How does an optometrist end up working with an NFL team?
Yeah, you know what? So as you kind of mentioned, I was in school in Boston, but prior to Boston, I was actually living in Ohio. And I was back and forth between there with my brother, and my parents were in Ohio. And so when I decided on where to practice, Cincinnati was just an easy fix, just considering family was there. And one of the things that I've learned over the course of my career, and it's been a few times over now, is if you want to be somewhere or be in the vicinity of someone, you need to be close to them. And so that when I was starting off with the whole connection with the Cincinnati Bengals, part of it was, quite frankly, connecting just like we are right now. What I found out early in my career is the fact that, like, you know what? You have pretty incredible patients that are in front of you day in and day out. And of course, our jobs are to be an OD and take care of their eyes, and here's their problem. Let me help solve it. But if you take that extra few moments of making kind of that deeper connection with your patients, it's amazing how much further it can go. And sometimes that'll always help you out professionally, but sometimes that can help you out personally as well. And it's always the best when you can marry those two things in together. So lo and behold, I had somebody in my exam chair in Cincinnati, one of the head office personnel for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it was just a connection. Like, he could have just been another patient that went in and out, but yet we found ourselves in a deeper conversation, conversing about life, conversing about the profession. And lo and behold, he's like, you know what? I would love for you to meet the head coach and have you meet the owners. And I think you could be a great fit to be, part of our organization at a different level. And quite frankly, I didn't have some incredible fellowship or residency in vision therapy or any sort of sports therapy. It was me just making a connection with the patient that's simply put in front of me and letting it kind of go from there and networking beyond that. So, it was an amazing experience. I'm with these guys in the locker room that are in their 20s and living their dream out. I'm sitting there living my dream out. And at the end of the day, they're just people. Every one of my experiences with the team and the Bengals, because I was with them for 3 years, was positive, fun, and just a great vibe. They're just in the locker room cutting each other's hair and cracking jokes, just like any one of us potentially would be with our colleagues or friends, with just cracking jokes. So it was just a great experience, and honestly just stemmed off with the idea of connecting with the patient that's in front of me and going from there. Fast forward, like my practice right now, I have two practices, but one of them is in Liberty Village, which is right around the Raptors practice facilities, right by BMO Field where the TFC play. So lo and behold, I'm fortunate enough to be around a lot of the players and the team personnel and head office people that, just because I'm in the area. And so if you do want to be, catch yourself wanting to be part of sports therapy or vision therapy or somewhere where like, hey, that's something that I can see myself doing. One, being close to that location is huge, but then also just making that deep connection with the patient that's right in front of you.
No, that's great advice, Rit. Were you in the locker room or on the sidelines? Were you changing contact lenses? What did you actually do?
Yeah, so we were in the locker room. We do all their medical testing prior to the season, in between games, just making sure that they do that. If there's ever an issue, they actually come into the office. It'd be along those lines. A few times on the sidelines, they generally would have like a medical care team that was on the sidelines day in, day out in terms of actual during games, just in case somebody gets poked in the eye, which, believe it or not, happens obviously quite often. But for the most part, it was more preseason care, during the season care, and then aftercare in the office.
Okay, that's amazing. That sounds like super fun. And you had a lot of personalities in those Bengal years from 2007 to 2010, like big names like Carson Palmer and Chad Ochocinco, Terrell Owens. Any war stories or standout moments you want to share with our listeners?
You know what? Like Ochocinco was obviously one of our patients. I should say that, I guess. And believe it or not, he actually only has one functioning eye. It's actually public knowledge, so I can say it. And for anybody who knows him or doesn't know him, or he's a wide receiver, and essentially with wide receiving or any sort of really being able to catch a ball from 30, 40, 50, 60 yards away, you need to have depth perception. he actually only saw through one eye. He was monocular in terms of his vision. So to be able to catch over your shoulder or either shoulder and yet see depth, obviously avoid somebody tackling you and really trying to take your head off while still catching the ball with one eye, I mean, it's pretty incredible. It takes a skill that's already by itself a pretty magical thing, and then takes it up a notch with being able to actually be at the level that he was, because that guy's a Pro Bowl wide receiver. The other flip side of that would be is for a lot of the offensive line, for anybody who knows football, they're the ones that are the closest to the quarterback and really in the scrum. A lot of them were nearsighted and never really wore any glasses or contacts. Their whole world is right in front of them, arm's length. And so a lot of these guys would come in and I'm like, you play football, you need glasses or contacts or something to be able to see. Like, how are you catching the ball? They're like, hey, my arm's length is perfectly fine. So somebody who's a -2 or -3 or -4 that I can't imagine being functioning in the world, like, without any sort of corrective wear, that person is perfectly fine in their quote unquote own office. So interesting stories for sure.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think some of our listeners would think, hey, professional athletes or professional football players would in general have better vision than the average person, but you're telling us that's not necessarily the case.
It's a use case, right? So like baseball players, different story. Like those guys need to see the way that stitching is rotating on the ball. And if you're, hitting a ball, if you're playing in center field and you need to see the ball that's in the air, and especially at nighttime, for sure, that person has to be able to see far superior than the uncorrected -4. And at the same time, if you're within arm's length and closer and you're a -2, -3, we probably know that person's probably functional for what they need to do, And if anything, obviously glasses wouldn't be really much of an option, but contacts would just probably get in the way if they were to fall out or, they get poked in the eye. It's almost better to not have, ironically, something in their eye like a contact lens or something else and just have their naked eyes and still see. So go figure. Yeah, it depends on the sport for sure.
It totally does. And I know you can train some of this through vision therapy. You can improve your ability with your eye-brain connection. For instance, my second daughter is a professional soccer player. She goes to school. And they do, they count the number of shoulder checks that the athletes do. And it turns out the most elite soccer players like Messi does more shoulder checks, so he has a better awareness. So can you speak to a little bit of that, of how you can train your vision and your perception to improve your sporting outcomes?
Yeah, isn't it amazing how far the science as well as just kind of like, your functionality has come when it comes to this, right? Like, because with vision therapy, as an example, and that, it's a pretty broad term, but, there's ways especially for baseball. Years ago, if you remember, Nike came out with their contact lenses that would improve contrast, which quite frankly makes a ton of sense. You see this with certain sunglass brands like Oakley, where you're like, okay, well, if I'm golfing, I have one pair of glasses, or if I'm riding my bike, I have another pair, and if I'm doing off-road biking, I have a different pair of glasses. All those different types of tints go a really long way. But like anything else, your brain is very plastic. The neurology of it all is it's quite magical. So you can teach a young dog new things, and you can teach an old dog new things. And I think vision therapy and a lot of the technology that's around that has just come a long way, right? So baseball is probably the sport that comes to mind the most in terms of spotting back and forth, up and down. It's gone down quite significantly in terms of our eyes are just set to this one screen, let's call it 15 or 20 inches across, and all you're doing is scrolling this way. And when you actually extend out your field of view and train it, that's really where you can see the stitching on that ball that much faster. And that's a difference of potentially hitting a home run or scoring a goal versus otherwise, right? You see this a lot with goalies as well. We're coming fresh off of a big hockey game last night with Canada versus US, but you see some of those saves and they're having to see a puck through a maze of people. It's not just training with how they're skating side to side, they're training their eyes as well. So certainly vision therapy has just a lot of an ability to incorporate into day-to-day practice when it comes to training those athletes.
Yeah, and I think you don't have to be necessarily a professional athlete to train your vision. This is a little bit weak, but I'm a pickleballer, and you get fast hands, and the more you do it, the better you get, right? Like you're kind of training your vision and your hand-eye coordination to be able to be more reactive to that. So, I think that's really, really interesting. One pressing question I had for you, Ritesh, when you examine these footballers that are big fellas, how do you even get them in the slit lamp? How do you get them in the microscope? They're
It's
huge.
one of those, like, you lean forward. You just lean all
Yeah.
the way forward. And quite frankly, you just want to, it's a balance of just like, okay, they're going to want to do it or they're not going to want to do it. And they've been used to being pampered, so you have to be a bit flexible on how you do things, because you got a 6'8" dude. And luckily enough for myself, I got decent height, but I'm not 6'8". So it's certainly like there's times you're on your tippy toes trying to do something there with these guys because they only have a few minutes to do what they need to do when it comes to their eyes,
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, good for you. What a great experience. And now, you took those, fantastic working experience with the Cincinnati Bengals, and then you wanted to come back to Toronto. So what drew you back to the Six?
Honestly, there was always like, there's something like home, right? Like there was something in my heart that always felt like Toronto was home. I grew up here. My wife is from here. We actually went to high school together, so we were from the same area. And although my family had moved down to the States, there was always an inkling of where I knew my heart was wanting to be. And quite frankly, also where we wanted to raise our children one day. We didn't have children at that point, but we were making a conscious decision of where we wanted to raise our family, and that was just north of the border, It was coincided with some opportunities that simply put came up, and it was just like, okay, well, you know what? This is as good a time as any. Either I'm gonna sit in between on something, whether I'm gonna stay in the States and just keep dreaming about being back and maybe never kind of felt like I scratched that itch of coming back, or be thankful for everything that being in the States served me for, and maybe I make my way back one day. But at least for now, Toronto felt like something I wanted to come back to. And we've been happy. We've been back here since 2010, almost 2011, and it's coming on 15 years, and there's nothing quite like being home.
Yeah, you always had a childhood dream of becoming an optometrist. I don't think I've ever heard that. Said no one ever. I was hearkening back to the little elf in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Like he wanted to be a dentist, so he left Santa's workshop to become a dentist. And I thought, when I watched that, I wanted to be a dentist. But I didn't necessarily want to be an optometrist because I wasn't exposed to it. What made you say I want to be an optometrist?
Oh my God. You know what? It's actually a pretty funny story. So I'm like a -5 with like 3.5 astigmatism. So like very much blind without my glasses. I could be an offensive lineman maybe. So nonetheless, I was going to my optometrist like often, and I was a rambunctious kid. Quite frankly, I'm a rambunctious adult. So I was breaking my glasses, constantly going in, breaking my glasses, constantly going in. And the funny story behind it is the fact that like my optometrist was probably the most boring person I ever met. And so here it is where I'm feeling like I'm coming in and I am now leaving with something that I can now magically see the world with. Like it's actually pretty incredible if you think about it. We just take it for granted because we do it day in, day out. But here's a child who's now, 8 or 9 years old, cannot see, put these things on your face. Now I physically see the world. So the person that's creating this magic for me is quite frankly a wizard. Like that's a magician. But he was also a guy that was always like, which is better, 1 or 2? And very monotone, and so be it. He was a great OD and helped me see, so I'm thankful for it. But I always kind of thought to myself, I'm like, man, this is an incredible thing. You get a chance to be a wizard that helps change people's lives. Certainly my life was being changed. How would I do it in my own way? So I was probably in grade 10, maybe even younger than that, where I decided like, hey, this is what I want to be. Fortunate enough to apply and get into the Waterloo pre-optometry program, and undergrad kind of got very specific and directed and just continued from there. But it was very early. But fast forward, so I see this optometrist who's now a colleague this many years later of mine. I'm like, I see him and I'm like, oh my God, let me pour my heart out to this guy. Like, you inspired me. You are the one that took this young child that didn't know what he wanted to do, and you helped me become an optometrist. Thank you for your inspiration. And he looked at me dead in the eye and he said, So I thought to myself, I'm like, same guy, nothing has changed, but that's all good. He inspired me, so I'm grateful for it. So I always thought to myself, I'm like, you know what, if I can help play that forward and bring that same passion that I'm now passionate about the profession onto the next gen, onto the next set of patients, onto the next child I may see that may inspire him to do what I do, which is, I again love it. Why not? So I've been very thankful for it. I love this profession and just grateful for what it's offered me and the family, and want to continue to always get back to it.
Yeah, thanks for the story. I think it's an interesting point where you could have an impact on somebody and not realize it.
Yeah.
One way or another, and you may be boring and still have a massive impact. You may not care, and you may have a massive impact on somebody. And I think, it's heartwarming to hear that you take that seriously. I know you're mentoring the next generation and you're interested in that. I wanted to get, I know in one of your clinics you have a lot of old cameras and pictures of cameras and photography. Can you tell me your interest in cameras?
Yeah, I mean, it's like it goes back to the basics of how we see, right? I like to think I'm a little bit of an amateur photographer, regardless. That's a kind of like something I am. It's a mix of my OCD as with my creative, artistic side. So it's a good balance there, just on my own personal level. And at the same time, when you think of what your eye does, is very much like a camera. So I got into this habit of just walking into antique stores and just asking what type of old cameras they had. And I thought, you know what better place to display my old cameras and video cameras, some of them are over 100 years old, believe it or not. And I just display them in the clinic. And you know what, they're conversation starters. And it's pretty cool to just have them up there and people say, oh my God. And I've had patients bring me gifts of their old cameras, or antiques, or where somebody somebody in their family passed away. They wanted me to have this camera because they know I enjoy it. So it's pretty cool. But it just started off with like my love for just, again, eyes and seeing, and the concept of being able to capture a picture. And this is the old school where like you would actually print out pictures versus like take a picture and maybe never see it again.
I don't know what you're talking about. What is that?
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors. I'm thrilled to share an exciting new resource for professionals in the eye care industry, Eye Care Collective. Eye Care Collective is redefining collaboration and growth in our industry. Whether you're a clinic owner, optician, or eye care professional, this platform empowers you with the tools you need to streamline your operations and elevate your success. As a member, you'll enjoy the benefits of consolidated billing, access to competitive pre-negotiated discounts, and programs tailored to support the unique needs of your practice. If you're ready to amplify your impact in the eye care world, visit www.eyecarecollective.ca and find out how Eye Care Collective can support your journey to success. You probably do a good job of capturing contact lens sales after seeing a patient. But what happens when they use up their initial supply? Yes, your patients love you, but at refill time, they're probably just taking the path of least resistance to restock their lenses, going online or to the big box stores. These missed opportunities add up to tens of thousands of dollars leaking out of your business. That's where Auto comes in. Auto allows you to be that path of least resistance. Auto is the easiest way for eye care practices to stay engaged with patients and offer them a frictionless way to order their contact lenses and dry eye products from you, rather than from your competitors. Timely refill reminders and one-click reorders offer patients an unbeatable purchasing experience. And on the back end, Auto is integrated directly with your suppliers to allow for uber-efficient order management and fulfillment, saving valuable staff time. Over 600 clinics across Canada and the US are already using Auto to reclaim lost sales and simplify their workflow. Want to learn more? Check out their website at autooptics.io. That's OTTO optics.io. Sell more, do less with Auto. I want to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial spirit. So you set up this new practice in a highly competitive market in Toronto and Liberty Village, and I just wanted to talk about your entrepreneurial spirit. Where did that come from? I know in school, I'll tell a little quick story, and you can expound on it. You and one of our other buddies, Sonny Bullar, Shalinder, you guys would go out and create a big party at one of the local nightclubs and sell tickets and raise funds to be able to fund sort of some philanthropic eye care ventures. So just tell us a little bit about that, and did that spur you on to this entrepreneurial bent that you have now in practice?
Yeah, thanks. And I think so. The reality is my parents have had their own business, not optometry related, but their own business. My brother's had his own business. So I guess there's a bit of it somewhat in the DNA of just like, hey, there's something that I can maybe follow in their footsteps in terms of having my own creativity, and at the same time, have some flexibility on the way it brings to your lifestyle as well. Yeah, when we were in school, we were raising monies for Vosh as part of our Vosh group, which is like when we're doing a volunteer mission, going out to certain countries. In our case, we happen to go to Nicaragua. And we were doing bake sales and all these things where we're raising funds, and we're like, you know what? Why don't we lead into what we do best, which is just have a lot of people have a fun time. We sold tickets, $10 a pop. Everybody had a great time. And one party had enough of a budget that, about 50 bake sales would bring in. And that kind of stemmed into like, you know what, let's throw more parties and, bring people together and everyone's happy. Like when I always look for triple wins, like what can help group or organization that I'm working for win? What can help, like in this case, that people have a good time. And at the end of the day, we're fortunate enough to be able to bring eye care or healthcare to a third world country. So, everyone's winning. And this was just one of those exact opportunities that kind of lend towards it. So I always kind of had a little bit of an itch, I think, just from my family, my parents, and some other family members as well, for that matter, my brother included. I had a little bit of an interesting experience because when I graduated, I'm both American and Canadian. I practiced in the States for many years, as I mentioned, and then made my way back to Toronto. But I probably, even while I was in the States, had that itch of where, the fact that we want to open our practice or open a practice or a clinic. And when I came back to Toronto, I knew nothing about Toronto optometry, for that matter. I hadn't been there in probably about 15 years by the time I had left and wanted to make my way back. So I had to start from scratch, networking, meeting people, understanding the profession in this province more than let alone a different country. And that itch was constantly there. So, wanting to create my own space and our own clinic was just at some point became something I wanted to scratch that much more. But the exact moment my wife and I were traveling, we were in India, we were actually doing another volunteer mission, and we were on a boat, and we were just literally staring at the water. And there was a very vivid moment that her and I just connected and be like, you know what, we're gonna go back and we're gonna do this. And it was before we had kids, and it was a turning point in our lives, because we're just like, you know what, instead of waffling on the idea of wanting to do it, maybe not do it, waiting for some sort of perfect moment, it was the exact moment where like, you know what, this is exactly perfect. I came back and I signed a lease within 2 weeks of being back from something that was sitting on for 7 years, So I think that the decision was made very quickly in one hand, but took a long time to get to that point on the other,
Yeah, 100%. And, location, they say, right? You really have picked a kind of a vibrant, hip location in Liberty Village. You can tell us about choosing your location.
It's really funny. This actually goes back when I wanted to open a practice, and we started looking at different places in Toronto. I had a whole matrix or spreadsheet of all the different things I'd be wanting to consider. Am I close by to density, residential? Is it close to businesses? Are there family doctors around? All these little tidbits. We literally looked for and scoured the city for 2 years. The first place I looked at was Liberty Village. And then we thought, hey, let's go around and just keep looking. And here we go. And like I said, fast forward 2 years later, almost, we're on a boat, decided on like, hey, this is what we're going to do. Stop waffling. Came back, literally went right back to Liberty Village, signed the lease within 2 weeks. And it was the exact place that we looked at almost a year and a half to 2 years prior to that, And I was reflecting on this actually, because it's funny, because we see this every day in clinic. Somebody comes in, they try on their first pair of glasses, they love it. They then go around the rest of the clinic being like, okay, maybe there's another one. What, 95% of the time, they just come back to the first one that they like to begin with. And I find myself, just by coincidence in the same position, because, you're always kind of like, okay, well, maybe there's something better. But I got really lucky because it was literally the perfect spot for us. It was a place that was up and coming, and it was, in a city like Toronto, it's like, there's density, but not necessarily a lot of new neighborhoods, but this is a beautiful new neighborhood, and they needed an optometrist. So we got very lucky in that sense, and we've been happy ever since there for about the last 12 years or so. So it's been pretty neat.
I think that's great. I was actually going to use the same analogy for when patients try on glasses for the first time. They some kind of cosmic force, I think. There's something there that the glasses are attracting that patient, and they are the ones. And it's the first ones they reach for. It's like some kind of pull towards each other, which is really interesting to kind of be in tune with that potential, right? Something's pulling you. What is it? Are you going to go with it? Or are you going to fight it? So it took you, a few years to kind of realize, this pull is there and I'm going to go with the new practice, and you haven't looked back since. So, when you build a new practice or anything that you do new, the origins of that sound great. Like it's a linear, straight up, successes, but there's always hurdles and challenges. And I know as you mentor younger ODs, it's not always rosy. There's some adversity along the way. So I just wanted, you to share with our listeners, Rit, what are your approaches to making mistakes? How do you pivot afterwards?
Yeah, you know what? I'm a true believer, and this is something that I've learned over the course of years. And honestly, even sharing this example was a good one. Is progress, not perfection. You can get caught up on having this perfect idea of where things should be versus progressing in a way, and that's the case on a personal level of where you want to be in terms of a technical level, where you want to be in terms of equipment. You want of course, you want everything to be perfect, but that if that comes in the way or becomes a hurdle in the way of making any sort of progress, and that's when it's become a little bit of a detriment. So for my team and people that I'm surrounded by and of course surround myself with, we put a lot of emphasis on just having your authentic self. Like my practice will play hip hop music, and it's a very kind of urban vibe, because guess what? That's what I want to listen to. So guess what? People are going to listen to it, and that's authentic to me. Our team is the same way, and you want members that are part of your team to be oozing your brand. If their personal brand alignment is aligned with your brand and you're able to convey that down to them and vice versa, guess what? They're going to be an ambassador of your brand to your patients. And as much as you think, and you should be the rock star of the clinic, there's times where, Trev, in your case, you have 5 clinics. You're not at all 5 places at once. So you want to make sure you're driving down that ambassadorship down to your team, and your team is then conveying down to your patients. So making sure that your team is in line with that is super important. But there's certainly times that that's not the case. And, potential mistakes I've made is having or keeping somebody on for longer than they should have been, even though if I knew in my gut, I knew where they needed to be, right? And this kind of goes back to our same conversation about location. The fact is, your gut is probably telling you something. Same thing when it comes to the eyewear example you gave. Your gut is telling you something. And the more you kind of fight that gut or go against the grain, the more it's just going to keep bringing itself back up, And so there's an old adage, you hire slow, fire fast. And I've been more in tune with that. If something doesn't feel right, you know what, I'm going to let it go, and that's okay, and it's better for both parties if that's the case. But some mistakes I've left in the past before I kind of, had that epiphany or learning was the fact that I'm trying to put a square peg in a round hole, and if that person's not meant to be part of the team, then it's not really beneficial for anybody. Most importantly for our patients potentially, secondly is for them, and then obviously for yourself as well,
Yeah, 100%. Nelson Mandela once said, I never lose, I either win or learn. And I think you've really, embodied that as you go forward. So what would you say if to a younger OD, a first-time practice owner, what piece of advice would you give them to sort of avoid a costly mistake? What advice would you give them?
You know what? Progress, not perfection, for sure. This is more of a personality trait of, throwing things against the wall, being okay with maybe 2 out of the 10 of them sticking and the other 8 just falling and not working out. That's okay, because if you just give up at the first chance at something that doesn't work out, and like your daughter, she plays soccer. If she took one shot, didn't hit, score a goal, does that mean she never takes a shot again? And the old Gretzky thing, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. I think by default, we're almost ingrained as ODs to be relatively conservative in practice and how we are with patients, and realizing, well, maybe that's the case with patient care, but that doesn't mean just that's the way you should be in business. Because in business, you have to be okay with, quote unquote, like you just said, not necessarily making mistakes, but having learnings, being okay with them, brush your shoulders off, get back up and try it again, and brush it off and try it again, and just be simply put okay with that. But if you get, if you touch something and it burns and you never want to touch it again, I think that's one thing that, it's one of those things that you should just fail faster, as they say.
Yeah, 100%. What's one of the biggest, newest technologies that you're really thrilled about, that you're super excited that you brought into your practices?
I mean, like probably over the last few years, like definitely dry eye related. That's been a huge thing for us here. Obviously, we're in Toronto, our winters are long, the air is dry. Again, we talked about being in Maui together. The second I stepped off the plane, and it was just like, wow, it hits you like a ton of bricks. And the reality is that's our space. That is literally optometry space. And so we've just continuously invested in that. We were the first in North America, as you mentioned, to have LipiFlow. We were the first in Canada to have IPL for MGD. We've like had slit lamp cameras for the last 12 years, all showcasing different things that we can do and continuously honing the craft, because these are things that everybody may do but may not put the emphasis on. But all of our patients know that this is really, we specialize in dry eye and styes and MGD, and they should know that. So that's something that we've been really huge in. On the macular health side, red light therapy, Aruna light, Macumira, these are technologies that are, again, completely in our realm of space, right? Like our patients are asking for it, they need it. And the more you kind of push that forward with being open-minded about new technologies, obviously ones that have been studied and ones that have the data behind it, and then you can then convey that down. One thing that we're really proud of in our practices is the fact that our ODs, our team know this, is if it's new, we want it, and we want to pass that down to our patients. Because the last thing you want is the exact opposite, where if they're hearing about it from somewhere else and you don't know about it, then they may feel like, hey, how come my OD is not up to par on this? I can quickly TikTok or Google this or Instagram this, and I know about it in 3 minutes, and that person doesn't know about it. That's a problem. But I'd always rather be the practitioner who's introducing something new to my patients, so they know, like, I'm up to date. I'm their subject matter expert, and I'm the one that's gonna, be there if you need me. And Macumira and Aruna Light are just a couple examples on the retinal space that's pretty exciting.
No, those are all really exciting. I love those technologies. I know, for our listeners that may not be in the optical field, LipiFlow is basically milking the glands, those meibomian glands, with superheating the meibum, which is contained within the glands, and then melting it out. I mean, quite a technology. You worked with Dr. Korb on that technology when you were a younger OD.
Yeah, you know what? Again, one of those things. Just I would like to say luck has played, a knock on wood, a pretty good role in life, and just being at the right place at the right time, but putting yourself in a position. Like, no one's going to hand you stuff, right? But having opportunities that are being put your way when you're not even in the room, that's the magic. When somebody can hopefully speak on your behalf and be able to say, hey, you know what? That guy Trev, he's an amazing guy. You're not even in the room and someone's speaking highly of you. That's magic. That's a gift. So I was fortunate enough I went to school in Boston. Dr. Korb's based out of Boston, obviously super well known in the industry, created multiple dry eye drops, coined the term MGD or meibomian gland dysfunction, defined temperatures, dozens of studies. Him and Dr. Blackie, like, they're the ones that just started even any sort of emphasis on dry eye. Like, it's not that long ago that it was just like, okay, well, you got dry eye, suck it up. And, maybe there's drops, which again, many drops he's created on his own, formulary wise, but also, here's baby shampoo, and that's what you're going to do moving forward. And it took decades before that changed, but it's literally thanks to him. Right. And Dr. Blackie, like, they did the studies, they put them out, they went up against the grain. And guess what? Like, he created formularies in his 70s in terms of like drops that are commercially available over the counter right now. This guy does not need to work, right? But yet just kept pushing the profession forward, and then came out with the technology of LipiFlow. So we were fortunate, flew to Boston. This was after I had been back in Toronto, for that matter, and went to my old stomping grounds and reconnected and brought the technology up to Toronto with Herzig Eye Institute. And it was approved in Health Canada before it was approved with FDA. So we were fortunate because we not only kind of brought the technology, but we had people flying in from all over the world, literally all over the world, that needed this treatment, and they would come to us here in Toronto to get it. And I was lucky enough to be the person that was doing it. So we've done tens of thousands of LipiFlows at this point. It was just something that I know has helped people over the course of the last decade. Other technologies have come, they've gone, and there's new things that come along the way, but it's still been the foundational thing that I recommend to my dry eye patients.
That's good to hear, because it's a gold standard. I have 2 LipiFlows and 2 dry eye centers. I think that's really good. I just a little comment on being lucky. I think for all of us, there's opportunity, right? There's always opportunity. It's just it depends if you're ready to receive it and take advantage and be there, be present for the opportunity. You never know where the opportunity is going to come. Like you say, it might be one of your patients that works for Cincinnati Bengals. It might be an amazing doctor that's developing a new technology. Are you open? I'd ask my colleagues, are you open to the opportunities that are going to pass by you? Do you recognize that this is an opportunity, and will you be able to take advantage at an early stage, like you have obviously done in multiple ways, not only in your business, but, in the profession as well. Rit, I wanted to talk a little bit about your boutique design in your clinics. You recently sent me some amazing pictures. Loved them. So cool. Hopefully we can share some of those on our social feeds with some of our listeners. But, you've got this superior design, and you've got an amazing patient experience. You're very experience-centric for your patients. And, one of the quotes that I've heard you say is, we don't have an optical, we have a frame gallery. We don't have a reception, we have a patient lounge. And we try to complement our designs by engaging the senses with great lighting, playing the latest music, and the smell of coffee brewing. It's all about experience. We believe that if we combine the patient experience with top-notch eye care, people will come back and gladly tell their friends about that experience. And so tell me a little bit about how you've leaned into this experience. And I think that's bang on, by the way. So just tell our listeners.
Yeah, you know what? Listen, like when I was a kid, I was just happy to go in and have somebody help me see, and nothing else really mattered. And obviously there's a supply and demand of that, right? And as time goes on, again, we're in Toronto or otherwise, I just go back to my authentic self. What do I want to hear when I come into my office? What do I want to smell when I come into my office? So there's a selfishness that goes along within it. There's an authenticity that inevitably goes along with it. And there's just a fun that feels right for us that goes along with it. So, we do have diffusers that have our scent, and we've had patients just come in and have hey, what is that smell? We use Sage products a lot. That's a store that we go through often. I have hand cream, antimicrobial hand cream that anytime I'm coming close to someone's face, obviously I'm sanitizing, but they will comment on oh my God, your hand smells so good as I'm coming close with this slit lamp. It doesn't have to smell like anything, but would it rather not? Isn't it nice that it smells nice? I mean,
Have you branded this stuff? Have you branded the scent?
Well, it's Sage. So, they've branded it, but C&B saging, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty good idea. See, there we go. I'm open.
I love it. You see the opportunity in front of you. That's amazing.
Yeah, I know, right? So we have that playing. We give out sour keys to our patients, and we're just here you go, have a candy. And what we're always trying to do is creating memories. And you're one thing where you're creating memories with your family, and that's obviously something that we're all trying to do, but you're trying to create these same memories and experiences with your patients. There's really no difference. There are certain things that you're gonna trigger when you remember, so they know, my patients know, when they smell that scent, they think of me. When they're coming in and they're hearing a certain vibe and they have that scent and they group it together, they know that. My patients will just come in, have a sour key, talk a little bit of smack and have fun and make some jokes and leave. They don't have to have an eye exam, but they're just getting that nostalgia. And when you can create nostalgia for somebody, it's like what they say, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So you're just creating that atmosphere that people want to come back to. And guess what? That person down the street can get an exam down the street, or they can get it from you. And if you're creating one level of experience, and the other person is, just doing an eye exam, that person has choice, and they're going to say hey, why not just go back to the place that helps me feel comfortable, and is of course assuming that they're giving top-notch care. One smells good and one smells neutral. I'm just going to go back to the place that smells good. That's an easy one, and gives us sour keys and gives coffee and just makes it an experience,
I think it's fantastic that you're tying in some of these other elements and some of the other senses to kind of create that lasting memory and consistency that patients can know and expect when they come to see you and come to see you again and again and again. One of our previous Optometry Unleashed guests, futurist Sean Kanungo, he looked at the Apple modeling the Genius Bar or hotel concierge service. Did you have a similar inspiration that drew you to this, experience piece to really drive your boutique clinic?
Yeah, 100% for sure. Like, and I tend to get a lot of inspiration from, other, not just retail stores, restaurants, hotels. When somebody walks in or checks in, what is that flow like? Because at the end of the day, I'd like to say we're in hospitality. Literally, we're in the hospitality business. We just happen to be in eye care. But hospitality, in a lot of ways, top down from yourself as the owner and down to your associates, down to your team, down to your patient concierge, that's what you're in. And you're just happen to be in the space of helping that person see better. But at the end of the day, your genuine heart has to be to care, right? And if you care, that person will sense it. And if you don't care, that person will sense it. What we want to do is when it comes back to even our design flow, even what we don't call them a receptionist, or our business cards say patient concierge, because that person should feel like that we have a team member that's holding their hands from every step of the way. And so when we created our welcoming bar and our gallery, all of it's geared towards just like that person coming in and feeling like they're coming into somewhere comfortable.
I wanted to pick your brain, for clinic owners that don't have a huge budget, but will really want to improve their patient experience. What are sort of 3 high impact, low cost changes they could make?
You know what? Put on a diffuser, play some music that you like, speakers and something simple, coffee. They're easy, it's low budget, it makes that person feel comfortable, and it doesn't cost you much, but it creates an atmosphere and experience, right? Like, you can invest in technology, but it's never going to be inexpensive. When you're investing in these imagers that we're talking about and so forth, like there's always going to be a cost, and there's an ROI on it, so it certainly is beneficial. But if you just want something that's being like, hey, what can I do to enhance my patient experience? And it's as easy as putting a few drops of, essential oils in a diffuser, and it's like $50. That's something that person will remember. If it's a matter of having coffee or creating a coffee station that doesn't cost you very much, that person's going to stay in your space that much longer. You put a hot cup of coffee or tea in someone's hand, they feel automatically their stress level and pressure goes down, and automatically they stay longer. And guess what? They stay a certain amount, they're going to spend money in your clinic. So everyone's really winning there. That person gets the experience, most importantly, and their eyewear they need, and you're also doing what's right for your business. So, I think those 2 or 3 small things: write music, get a diffuser, and have some coffee.
No, I think those are exactly right. I mean, those are touch points with the patient. For me, it also starts with just welcoming the patient, like as if you're expecting them and greeting them, and it's not a kind of a number and it's dismissive at the front. And so I love that you have this patient lounge experience, you kind of welcoming space where they can have a coffee and really feel like an important part, that we're expecting them and they're welcome, and it's concierge. Those are all feelings that you need to get to your patient, and that's why you're being so successful. So that is absolutely fantastic. I want to pivot a little bit towards AI. You and I've had chats about AI and some of the things that you're doing specifically, but training your AI to be better. Can you just let me know how you're using AI in your patient care, in your practice, in your business?
How we're incorporating it in is especially on the business side of things. I will now plug in spreadsheets of information, upload it to ChatGPT, give me a breakdown of how my dispensary is doing, what type of eyewear I should be budgeting for, how much space on the board it should be taking up. And it is wild. I will upload a massive spreadsheet of, like, let's say data over, let's call it 2024, and just tell me top 5 eyewear collections that we're selling, top 5 price points I should be budgeting for. Should I be raising prices, lowering prices? How many board spaces I should be having? And it will spit out information and data, accurate thought processes that I honestly wouldn't have thought about myself. So it's helping me in the end better serve my patients, right? And bring to them what I may have a hunch, and I can look at the data and think I know what they need, and this is going to crunch it in a way that I wouldn't even be able to crunch it. So there's different facets you can bring in. You can bring it into a clinical sense with technology and imaging, and you can bring it towards it when it comes to a business analysis and help you understand your patients that much better as well. So there's a few different ways we're bringing it in. I'm actually curious, how are you bringing it in as well? How are you incorporating AI?
So, how we incorporate AI is we're taking the scans directly from our OCT, which is, that tomographer, that scanning MRI type scans, and the fundus, which is the retina scans. And our AI is actually giving us tentative diagnosis now, which is really great. Think of it like a physician assistant, which will help you look into that. I know there's going to be other links, dementia and retinal photography, for instance, other things that we didn't even think of could be correlated, and we're going to get more information from that. So I think that's where we're taking AI to the next level. Also looking retrospectively into change analysis is really helping us look at, is there been changes, particularly with macular degeneration and some of the new retina rejuvenation treatments that we've instituted, Ritesh, to be able to look at, are these technologies slowing down the progression and improving structure, because we are improving vision. So pretty exciting time in eye care to actually be able to bring AI oversight to help us manage the treatment plan for our patients on a go forward basis, whether it's adding red light therapy like Arunalite and some other pieces, vitamin, nutritional supplements. What difference is that making, and to really give data behind our recommendations. So I'm pretty excited about AI as well. I think it's so cool. My son's in software engineering, and I just think he's going to come in and build me an AI agent. So my AI agent can meet your AI agent and have a great old time, and they just let us know the key top findings.
Well, you know what? I love that, especially if you have a software gen in the family. You guys are golden. You have this magic too, Trev, because you have obviously the podcast and everything else that you do, newsletters and stuff that you send. So there's actually an AI. You can create an AI clone of yourself if you haven't or seen that already. And now at this point, given how much data you do or videos and stuff that you create, that AI clone that you can create of yourself, that when a patient asks you a question, we get these, I'm sure all the time, where you get a text message or an email from a patient and you're like, oh man, I've answered this 100 times. Now you have just a AI version or clone of Trevor that can just give them a response. Take it a step further. Anytime somebody gets an automatic or an email right into your inbox and they say a certain word, and there's an automatic email that goes right back out with a video of you, and it's an AI version of you, but it's you because you've created the content over the course of years and they know your voice. That person's getting to the source of who their subject matter expert is, yourself. That patient is getting an instant response. You're not necessarily having to take out time of your day, and it's all because you created this content. So, I don't think we're that far off of, most of this stuff is already existent. All those things just allow you to be that much better of a practitioner and again, be more present with the people you're with, but then still care for the person that may not be, that might be having an emergency that's not right there in front of you.
Yeah, so cool. Pretty exciting time that we live in, for sure. What do you think are some of the other breakthroughs that are coming down the pipe in optometry? What's next?
I definitely leaning into the technology in our space. So I think Macumera, which is, do you have I do have
Macumera. Just explain a little bit of what Macumera is, Rit.
So, there's a couple different types of macular degeneration. First of all, macular degeneration, leading cause of blindness in North America. It's been the case for many, many years and decades. There's two types of macular degeneration. There's dry, which is, let's call it 90% of patients. There's wet, that is about 10%. And the reality would be is, your recommendation typically for dry before it gets to wet is, of course, UV protection. Secondly would be potentially vitamins in where required. And then at some point, you're just waiting it out until they get to a point where if it does get worse, you're doing injections. And injections into the eye are exactly what they sound like. There's an injection into the eye. And it's not something that somebody wants to, purposely have to go through if you can help prevent against it. So where the technology with something like Arunalite or Macumera it's specifically with Macumera, it's 4 sessions. Right? 4 sessions? 6 sessions? 4 sessions.
4 sessions.
4 sessions, 32 minutes each within, let's call it a few weeks. And there's been signs where basically that the visual acuity is improving about two lines, right? 8 to 10 letters, 9 letters actually. 8.8, I think is the data. And that's significant because against the placebo group, they're losing vision. And so this is something where it's a non-invasive technology. The patient is sitting there comfortably. It's a headset that goes over someone's eyes. Their eyes are closed. And you're stimulating the RPE or the retina within the eye, which is where macular degeneration is affecting the vision. And you're hopefully not just slowing it down, but you're actually reversing some of those things so that that person doesn't have to get injections into the eye. So it's pretty incredible. After the first 4 sessions, and there's a continuous, let's call it every quarter therapy, and it's been pretty magical. I'd be curious to see what you've been seeing in your clinic as well, but it's been something that I think that's, again, if I'm looking at what's within the space of optometry, instead of it letting it be elsewhere, this is where it's our wheelhouse. It's like, how do we prevent this from being an issue for people? It's obviously the number one cause of blindness. Why wait for something worse to happen? And we want to be the people that are the messengers or the conveyors of this information to our patients, you know?
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That's a good way to think. I'm excited it's working for my patients. I'm exposing everybody that has macular degeneration to the opportunity. In the past, we used to just wait till their vision got worse. Now we can actually improve vision. Does that improve their structure? I think it does. It on a cellular level, we're obviously improving the energy powerhouse, the mitochondria, to function better. So I think that's really, really cool. Also, early detection of macular degeneration for those patients that have early signs of macular degeneration, they might complain of night driving issues. And we've now instituted a dark adaptation test to be able to detect it upstream. So then do you intercede with red light therapy or even Macumira, transferable microcurrent, to mitigate the potential to lose actual eyesight? So can we treat it more upstream? I think you'll see more studies on that. You'll see structural serial analysis over time to be able to prove that we're improving at a structural level as well as at a functional level. We know that the vision improves. So it's pretty exciting times in the macular degeneration space.
Yeah, and I think you just nailed it. I'm sure most people, whether you're in healthcare space or just honestly on Instagram, have seen red light therapy, like in some form or the other. You see it in the form of like masks that you have for people's skin and, full body rejuvenation. There's a lot of what's not necessarily, it's been new because it's more to the mainstream. I've probably known about red light therapy for the last 5 years or so, probably more longer than that. But the idea here is that mitochondria turnover is huge. And when we know the mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell, every cell in your entire body has a mitochondria. So if we can help stimulate that in different ways, help enhance its function, which is what red light therapy does, and whether it's in the retina or otherwise, then it's a very powerful thing. But I think it's coming more to the forefront now because you see those masks on Instagram or on social media. And so it's a little bit less of a, hey, what is that Aruna light, funny looking red light glasses that are on your eyes? Most people have heard about red light before, whereas 5 years ago that would have been like, this crazy doctor is recommending red light therapy. I've never heard of that before. So it's always nice when it's kind of been a marriage of what you're bringing to the table as a cutting edge on the forefront practitioner with like, hey, the patients are also seeing this on a more macro level too.
I think it's the science of understanding light in the brain and what frequency, what spectrum of the rainbow we need at certain times. I was just at Transitions Academy learning a little bit about that, reducing jet lag with certain bursts of light at certain times. So it's very, very interesting. And we just brought in Avalux, which is a migraine tint to reduce the, and mediate, migraines. Very, very fascinating. All of these pieces of how light and light attenuation can play a role in our health. So it's pretty cool.
Well, it's wild. I think that's like, this is our ability to be subject matter experts. And this is something that I'm even changing my recommendations on, of just like a black and white, no, UV is bad for you. In fact, that's completely incorrect. The sun is probably the most important thing that we can expose ourselves to in its own ways. And like Trev just said, like certain times, super important. Out in the first thing in the morning, you should be exposing yourself to UV or to the sunlight. That's how your entire body wakes up and neurologically wakes up. And after the sun is down, we should not be exposed to things like blue UV and overhead lighting, where the lighting hits even within your retina. So, during morning hours and let's say sunset and sunrise and sunset, it's hitting at a certain angle of your retina versus midday it's hitting at a different angle. All those things are not just a black and white sunlight, binary yes exposure and or no. It's like where it is actually hitting your retina is then sending different downstream messages down to your brain, and each one of those angles are then having a different outcome in terms of what the impact is again on your brain and your mood and everything else. So I think that's something that I'm glad you brought it up, because it's like not just the mitochondria, but then also UV exposure, and not just being a black and white. No, you should actually, in fact, be exposed to certain types of UV at certain times and avoid it at others. And I think it's an important field that we again could be the subject matter experts on. We should.
Yeah, I think we're going to find out more. You're going to have different classes for different times of day, just depending on what your health needs are, and be very individualized. So I see that coming up. My recent guest was my brother, who's an audiologist, and he was talking about sort of incrementalism in terms of improvement in your senses. And I fit him with a neural lens, and he said, hey, it's about, Trevor, you improved my vision about 5 to 10%. And I thought, well, it didn't make a huge difference at the beginning. And then he realized that 10% improvement in vision over the course of a busy day, he's a practitioner and seeing patients of his own on the hearing side, is pretty awesome. So I wondered what your thoughts of being able to expose your patients to a premium solution. Some of the practitioners I talk to, they really don't even want to, engage a patient in some of these solutions because they say, it's just a little bit better. But for my brother and other people, they would love to get the best, and that 5 to 10% is impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's a couple thoughts. One is I'm not going to be the person that decides that, right? Like, I'm a person specifically myself that it's literally the details that matter. That's how I care. That's how I do everything. And how you do one thing is how you do everything. And so if you're not caring about the small things, then how can you care about the big things, right? The other example I typically give to my own patients for that matter is like, we're all caught in repetitive natures throughout the day. It's like that 5% is for that, or 5 to 10%, the example you gave is for that period in time. But then that's also 5 to 10% every hour of what you're doing it. So as an example, I tend to give it like, well, I can slouch like this and sit with my shoulders down and my back rounded for a few minutes, maybe get away with it. If I did that for 8 hours, I would feel it, right? So if I am 10% better and I'm sitting up straight and my back is more aligned, for 1 minute it's going to feel better, but certainly 10 hours later it's going to be better. So if I'm seeing 80 or 90% of what I should see for a few minutes, maybe I can get away with it. But if I'm doing that same task for 10 hours and I'm seeing it, sub-ideal optimal levels, that's kind of crap. So I don't, I think when it's generally how you explain it to your patients will let them be the decision maker. And, the impact your vision actually has neurologically, dementia. I mean, obviously your brother being an audiologist would be one of the first people to say there's a direct link between vision, hearing, and dementia. So why take that risk?
Yeah, 100%. I love that you say, like expose it to the patient. You're the subject matter expert and let them decide. But it's our job to show them what's possible anyway. So do you go to some of these continuing education seminars? What's your favorite place to sort of, learn more?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I'm very nerdy. I love it. It's leaned into it. I'm always constantly wanting to learn new things. I love, picking someone's brain like we are having a conversation right now, learning of how you're doing within practice. I recommend has amazing training. We've always done NTE. We just came back from leadership conference together, as you mentioned. We do things out where we go and lecture to schools. Vision Expo, I've gone there every single year in New York and out in Vegas. So, that's where you're going to hear about these new technologies. That's where you're going to get into the nitty gritty. So I really put a lot of emphasis there of where selfishly I want to learn, obviously most importantly for my patients. And then there's also an opportunity to be able to obviously connect with your colleagues. And if you just stay within your own little silo, you could do fine. but you're just going to be in your one little, literally in your own silo and in your dark little hole, and you're not going to necessarily keep an open mind about things. Whereas when you're out there networking and connecting, and like you said earlier, put yourself in the opportunity to have luck come your way, there's a lot of benefits of just going to those events. So yeah, I definitely take advantage of all the things that I recommend but certainly put myself out there when it comes to Vision Expos East and West for sure.
Well, and I've been blessed to, meet people like you, Ritesh, and learn and soak up the energy and the positivity and sort of your philosophy of life that, you're going to go with it and you're going to make the best and it's going to be the best. So I love the energy I feel when I meet colleagues like yourself. So we're going to go to a segment we call Better One or Better Two. And, it's a little known secret here that sometimes your optometrists are looking for when they're pretty close. So I'm going to let you say Better One or Better Two, or, both the same. Don't pick three. It's Better One or Better Two. Nike or Adidas shoes?
Nike.
The ultimate sneaker collection or the ultimate eyewear collection?
Eyewear.
Okay, yeah, you got some cool glasses on as well. Also, if you don't know, Ritesh has got these really cool sweaters and stuff, so he's a fashion plate for sure. Trusting your gut or relying on data?
Gut.
He just went quickly with his gut on the answer there. That's fantastic. You got it. Books or podcasts?
I'm pretty 50-50, but I consume more podcasts just because of the way that I consume things. When I'm driving, I can't read, but I can listen to a podcast. But before bed, I try to put myself reading a book.
And any good book you're reading right now?
Yeah, I'm reading actually two of them. One is Untangled. I'm just starting that. It's more of a parenting book directed towards parents with girls. So that's one. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She's not tangled at all, but I'm just kind of setting myself up with education. And podcasts I was listening to is The Algebra of Wealth is one I've listened to over and over again.
Amazing. We'll share that in the show notes for sure. A week without coffee or a week without music?
Oh, God. That's what, considering, I think you hit a contentious subject, because both those things are absolutely crucial for me. You know what? I would go a week without coffee before I go to a week without music. Music is like absolutely pivotal in my life. If there was one thing that a lot of people may know about me or will know about me, my team certainly knows this. If the music is not playing, if there's not like a party going on, anytime I walk into a room, like heads are going to roll. There should be music and a party going on at all times. Like I want to walk into every room and my favorite song should be on everywhere I go.
DJ Ritesh Patel. I love it. I love it. Okay, better one, traveling with an itinerary, or better two, wandering with no plans?
Wandering with no plans. Absolutely. It's what a great question. How do you know this?
You know what? When I was with you in NECO at Boston when we were lecturing together, and we were with Lee, the CEO of I Recommend, and you just basically started wandering. You just started, you were literally inhaling the city. You were soaking it up, and the joy. Lee and I were just looking at you and like, where's this guy? Where's he going? He's just wherever you wanted to go, like wherever your body, wherever your soul was taking you, you were going. And it was kind of cool for Lee and I to kind of witness that in real time. So
I thought you guys were talking about this. I don't know. It's absolutely hilarious. Like I said, like we had an RV road trip that we did last year. And part of the reason, there's a lot of adventures that go along with an RV. But the whole point of it, and when I describe this to people, because I have this conversation ironically quite a bit, it's our lives as ODs, as practitioners, maybe even as business owners, everything is in like half an hour, 45-minute, 50-minute increments. That's our career. Meetings like this, they're 1 or 2 hours, and that is what it is. I then want my personal life to not be like that. Like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know a menu of a restaurant. I just know I'm going to eat great food. I'm sure I'm going to watch a great movie. I don't want to know how long it is. I just want to just let it go. So I like having that freedom and that creativity. I don't want it to be fed. I actually that's why I enjoy reading a newspaper versus just kind of going online. I'm a news buff. I don't want to just be clicking on what I'm being served versus reading a newspaper and seeing things that I didn't think I would want to know, and yet I know that, So there's a bit of old schoolness. I'm definitely 1,000% wanderer. I prefer no plans. My vacation would be no plans.
I love that. That'd drive my wife crazy, but I
absolutely.
think that
It drives my wife crazy, for sure.
I love it though. That's perfect. Beautiful. We're gonna have to go on vacation together, drive the wives crazy. Let's do that.
100%.
Yeah. Number one, meeting your favorite celebrity, or number two, getting a personal handwritten letter from the celebrity.
Meaning.
Yeah, meeting, because then you can explore everything. I love that. And the last one, better one Nikon camera or two a Canon camera.
You know what? I'm a Nikon guy. I've leaned into Nikon. I have multiple Nikon lenses. That's my camera. So once you have that on an SLR, although my first, remember the digital Alps? Like the first kind of like point and shoot digital camera.
Oh yes. The SLT, or was that what it was called?
It's a digital elf. It's like
digital elf. It was called.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was the first like kind of like no, like before cameras were on phones as much as they are now, because obviously you don't need that as much anymore. That was like my camera. So I've had tons of Canon cameras, and I've probably had one or two major Nikon cameras. And so Nikon is my go-to camera now.
Yeah, Nikon has a beautiful camera for sure. Beautiful optics. I know you've had a lot of influences in your career. Tell me a little bit about Jim Shields.
So Jim Shields, thanks for that. I mean, you know what? It's he wrote this amazing book that really resonated with me. It's called The Family Boardroom. And, it came in to me, everything tends to come at the right time in the right place. And, there's no coincidences. I'm just that philosophical guy. And so that book came to me. I have two young children. They're 9 and 6 now, but I was introduced to that book around age 7 and 4. And the idea and the concept behind it is you have about 18 years of summers with your children. And the fact is you want to try and create as many memories as possible. And, your day-to-day, if any of us who have kids, Trev, I know you have kids, is the fact that, like, sometimes the day-to-day, it's not mundane, but it's just like, hey, pack the kids up, go to school, come home, do their activities, lather, rinse, repeat. But what a lot of studies will show is that the fact that, like, the summers are times that they will vividly remember for the rest of their life. And, I can look back on my own summers in the same way. So the concept behind the Family Boardroom is, one, creating magical summers with your family, and having the family be involved, and specifically each child. I have 2 children, so having each child be involved with the decisions as to what type of activities or what type of like exciting things they're going to do. So having that connection. So as an example, what we did 2 summers ago, or last summer I should say, was that we did an RV road trip, and it was the kids' idea. So there's always a lot easier buy-in when it's whoever's coming up with the idea, and then they're excited to be able to do it. And me and the kids drove about 2,000 kilometers out east to Nova Scotia from Toronto. And we had this magical 14-day excursion where we just stopped wherever we wanted to stop and pulled over if we wanted to get an apple pie. And then we'd stop, if we saw, somewhere we wanted to be able to do that. And we just created these magical moments and memories. And the book really resonated with me because, what I'm always trying to find the balance of is, obviously being a practitioner, being the best OD I can to my patients. And at the end of the day, obviously you have a successful business, but what is it for if it's not for your family? And so the Family Boardroom kind of really stuck with me in terms of having and creating these amazing memories with the kids, having them be involved with the decision making, and really having that one-on-one time with your child. So it's like, hey, you know what? You want to go-karting? With my daughter's a go-karter. Do you want to go-karting? Yes. When are we going to go? Let's set a date. And while we're done go-karting, then set the next time or where the next place you're going to go with that child, and having that deep connection with your family. So the Family Boardroom was really something that came at me at the right time. I happened to lose my grandparents at the same time, and I'm lucky. I was a 40-year-old with 2 of my 4 grandparents, which a lot of people can't say, but in turn I had a magical relationship with them. So that book came to me at the right time, so I was able to then hopefully cherish the moments with them, but then also be able to kind of pass down to the next gen with my own children.
I want to talk as we wrap up here, this book by Bill Perkins about maximizing your net fulfillment over your net worth. It's a book called Die with Zero. And you've mentioned that philosophy a little bit and how you've shifted your perspective around that. Can you just walk us through the ideas behind Die with Zero and memory dividends and how that's altered your life professionally or personally?
Yeah, absolutely game-shifting book that in the last couple of years have like literally changed the trajectory of my life in a positive way. Again, happened to be introduced to it at the exact same time as the family boardroom, which happened to coincide when, there's been some shifts in our grandparents and our family. So it all hit me at the right time. And the reality would be is like, there's always, of course, you go through school, you work as hard as you are, you have your practice. And to a certain point, obviously you want to have the financial stuff that goes along with it. I work hard, I should make a lot of money. At some point, the decision becomes, well, what am I doing with that money? Am I just accumulating it? Is there any sort of value to it? And the fact is, most of us end up passing away and with way more than we absolutely need. And you think, okay, when, I'll work X amount of years, I'll work this hard, and guess what? When I'm retired at 65 or 70 or whenever it is, I'm going to go on that vacation, or I'm going to go on that trip, and I'm going to climb that mountain. And the reality would be is none of that is guaranteed, right? What is known, and there's a lot of statistics behind this, is that when you do pass, the majority of people end up passing with a ton of money that, basically is just going right back to the government. So, times there is allocated to be like, hey, I'm going to donate it to a school, or I'm going to donate it to a religious, something I'm part of religiously. But wouldn't it be nice to just donate it while you're alive and see the reactions and have you experience it, and then when you pass, you're not having to just leave something behind and never see the reaction? Like, no one's really winning on that standpoint. So the idea with die with zero, because it's a bit morbid to think of this, but at the end of the day, die with no money. Allocate your funds, where it should go, your children, your family, your, again, religious side of things, travels, whatever. But you should be doing things along the way such that you're not left with financial dividends, but you're left with memory dividends. And the memory dividends are things that you're going to remember. Like, I can look back on this RV road trip, which was 10 days or 14 days for the rest of our lives. And there's so many core memories that were created then that from now on, I don't know how much that RV cost me. It's completely irrelevant. But if I did that, if I decide to be like, hey, when I'm 65, I'm going to do that RV road trip, or I could do it now and I can enjoy those memories that continuously end up, quote unquote, paying back in terms of its joy that it brings me. Well, the longer I get those dividends, the better. So memory dividends is the idea of like spending that money, creating memories, getting those experiences, and then replaying those in your mind with your family, whoever else you're sharing that with, versus accumulating more wealth for no reason besides end up leaving with only half of it, or leaving your family with half of it and the other half of it going away. So just being smart about where your finances are going and choose experiences over finances. So I was one of those guys that I've been pretty good. I would look back and I'm pretty good. I try and do those experiences and travels and stuff like that along the way. But there's certainly times where I was probably being a bit more frugal than I needed to be, just because, that's, the way I was built, of just paying back your bills and, business or school loans. And that should be your priority, and sacrifice making maybe memories along the way as secondary. Wait till you're done paying those off to do that. And, there's a happy medium between those two things.
Yeah, it sounds like you've discovered the Gen Z mentality.
I still work, eh?
I mean, it's like they seem to have it right. Like they're just chilling, they might want to buy a house, and they're going about it. But it's true. Us Gen Xers can kind of take that lesson a little bit and say, hey, you can enjoy it along the way, and that's what brings joy every day, is enjoy it along the way. So thank you so much for sharing that, Ritesh. As we wrap up, is there any questions? Is there anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to say?
Honestly, like, one of the biggest things that I will constantly put emphasis on, and this literally the last hour and a half or 2 hours has been a perfect example of that, is mentorship, guidance, asking questions, being curious. And I got great advice from one of my mentors, Dr. Michael Rothholtz, who's I think a friend of both of ours for that matter, is like, I would pick his brain and ask him questions and meet up with him and coffees. And this is before I was even having my own practice, just because I was just somebody that was connecting with him. And I'd always ask him, like, how can I thank you, or thank you for everything, that all the time that you're spending with me? He's like, you know what? Just pass it forward. Like, that's the best thing you could possibly do. When you learn, you teach. And I want to just thank you for always being in my heart in the same way, of somebody who's taken the profession, taken someone who's, I'm just going to say, I'm a bit younger. Although you look quite young. You're a young guy. We're about the same age. But you're wiser. Let's put it that way. You're a much wiser person. And sharing that wisdom with someone like myself, I'm just grateful for and thankful for. And I, hopefully promise to kind of do the same thing moving forward with other people. And I just want to, net that out to whoever's listening to do the same. And guess what? People who are successful, like yourself, Trev, they want to help. They actually take pride in helping. And I think a lot of times we can be a bit nervous to be able to ask for advice or ask for that time, ask for that guidance. And there's somebody like yourself and myself that are waiting to be able to give that guidance back down. And so when you're looking for, like I said earlier, like where's the double or triple wins that come along the way, that potentially younger OD or practitioner may have questions that they can ask, and they're going to get a win by getting those questions answered. And guess what? On the other end of the spectrum, someone like yourself or myself get a win by sharing that wisdom. So everyone's happy and winning. So don't be shy. Don't be shy to ask. People like us are happy to help.
Well, thanks for that, Ritesh. And I know, your generosity of spirit and actual advice, and having lived the dream and build, an amazing practice, but also being an amazing father and partner, and just a beam of light in our industry. I think it's amazing. So thanks for taking the time to join us on Optometry Unleashed. I know we covered a lot today, and we'll have show notes if you want to read some of the books that Dr. Patel has recommended. And I want to thank you all for listening today and joining us as always on Optometry Unleashed. If you have any thoughts or questions, please reach out to us. We're on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Give us a good review if you like it, what you hear, and if you have a guest suggestion, we'd love to hear that. Thanks again, Ritesh. I hope to see you soon, buddy, and we'll look forward to the next episode of Optometry Unleashed.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate all that you do. Thank you.